Hello everyone, my name is Grayson Rabbit, and I am the Queen of Floof. If you haven't heard of me before, I'm a self-taught anime-style artist with 3 years of experience. I've talked to a lot of people who are interested in starting to draw, and I'd like to help you make that process smoother. The advice being given in this video is most applicable to those looking to become anime-style digital artists. This guide was also made with the help of some of the wonderful artists from my Discord server. Before we get started, I'd like to make this point clear. Everybody can be an artist. While everyone might have different learning curves or disabilities that require additional accommodation, you are capable of producing high-quality art that will make you happy and let you express yourself. I am absolutely confident in every one of you. I've seen the amazing things people can do when they let go of their self-doubt. You are way more capable than you have any idea, and that's not something I'll ever let you dispute with me. This video has 3 sections. The first and most important section will go over the right mindset to have regarding your art, then I'll discuss the physical materials you need to get started, and finally I'll suggest a routine to help you develop the initial skills you need. Timestamps are in the description. Our first and most important tool is mindset. If you have prior experience with learning an instrument, or otherwise pursuing a creative difficult skill, you may already be familiar with how important mindset is. So what is mindset? Mindset describes the way you hold standards for yourself, as well as the goals you set. A positive and healthy mindset will have the right balance, where you're critical of your own work and push yourself to improve, but you can still be proud of what you make and feel accomplished with your growth. You've probably heard of the perfectionist mindset, or perhaps you're one yourself. A perfectionist is likely going to hold unrealistic standards for themselves. If something they make has clear mistakes or flaws, they may spend excessive amounts of time redrawing the same thing until they burn out, draining them of their energy and leaving them dissatisfied. Alternatively, it's not uncommon either for some artists to set low or non-existent standards for themselves and ignore any critique they receive. There's so much value in pushing yourself to improve and learn a skill. I promise you it is worth your time and effort. I've personally met many people who think this way, and helped a good number of them work past this attitude. While this way of thinking may have developed for any number of reasons, and I cannot provide the solution to everybody, I'll share my own attitudes for art so that you can recognize if your attitude is unhealthy and strive for it. One of the tools I use when evaluating my own work is a consideration of how much time I've invested compared to the difficulty of what I'm doing. Say to yourself, drawing is not easy. It takes time, dedication, and experience, which I am working towards, but have not yet reached. Considering that fact, and how I put my best effort into drawing anyway, for the sake of improvement, what I did is amazing. Every time you draw, no matter what skill level you are, you're putting genuine effort into something quite difficult, but you're doing it despite the difficulty. Once you recognize that there is great value in any piece you make just by the simple fact that you put effort into it, you'll be in a better place mentally to accept criticism and still be proud of yourself. If you can focus on improvement and still appreciate the art you make, you're doing super well. Next up, materials. Every artist needs some sort of medium to produce their work, and it differs depending on whether you start with pencil and paper, which can also be called traditional, or digital. I strongly recommend that new artists start drawing traditionally, even if you're interested in drawing digital art. All you need is a comfortable pencil, printer paper, and an eraser that won't leave bad smudge marks. And I recommend getting a nice mechanical pencil. This will be the cheapest and most effective way to get started. If you're wondering why I recommend somebody interested in digital art to start out with pencil and paper, it is because even expensive drawing tablets for digital art have a serious learning curve to them. Paper and pencil will be a lot more comfortable and intuitive for most beginners. If you absolutely insist that you must start with digital right away, you should know that the first month or two may be very, very frustrating due to the higher floor for hand-eye coordination. If you believe you're ready to transition to digital art, you'll want to know about drawing software and drawing tablets. For drawing digital art in an anime style, there are 3 programs I have personal experience with, and those are Clip Studio Paint, Photoshop, and Paint Tool Sai. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, and links to them will be in the description. Clip Studio Paint is my go-to recommendation for anybody getting started in anime-style digital art. It's quite intuitive. It has very good line stabilization in the program by default, which makes creating line art a much less stressful experience. It can also import brushes and files from Photoshop if you want to. It has a relatively low price of $50 for a lifetime license. I highly recommend Clip Studio Paint. You've likely heard of Photoshop. It has a wide array of tools suited for editing photos and design work, but those are unnecessary for anime art. It's also the industry standard for professional artists. Lastly, it's the most popular software among non-anime style artists, and a lot of drawing tutorials will likely be using Photoshop. Unfortunately, it has two major flaws. Its line stabilization by default is really poor. It's much more difficult to draw clean lines both as a beginner and even as a more skilled artist. The other issue is cost. It's quite expensive at $21 a month. Your last option for drawing software is Paint Toolsai. Its line stabilization is decent and it has a cost of 5,500 Japanese yen, which at the time of writing is $47. This is the most lightweight software, and as a result it lacks many helpful features that Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint have. Nonetheless, it is still used by a lot of very skilled Japanese artists. If you're trying to draw anime art and you aren't using any of these programs, you're probably doing something wrong. Most other choices lack important features that are necessary in order to draw effectively. Now, onto drawing tablets. If you've never seen one before, they consist of a surface to draw on and a pen that the surface detects. Additionally, the pen itself will detect how hard you're pressing against the tablet, which will be communicated to the drawing software you're using. Most of the time, you'll set the size of your brush to be dependent on this pressure. These are necessary because computer mice are much heavier compared to tablet pens. They lack pressure sensitivity, and they aren't made for the kinds of movements you'll be making while drawing. Using a mouse to draw would be putting yourself at serious risk of injury, and your improvement would be incredibly slow or non-existent. It is not an option. Wacom, XP Pen, and Huion are all known for making drawing tablets. However, I only have personal experience with Wacom and XP Pen tablets, so I'll be sticking to recommendations for their products. Wacom currently calls their budget line Wacom 1, and they're what I consider to be in the ideal price range. They meet the basic needs of tablets with a decent lifespan, good surface texture, battery-free stylus, and precise pressure sensitivity. The Wacom CTL 4100 is a tablet I've used myself and can personally recommend. It's also bundled with a year of Clip Studio Paint, which I really appreciated as a beginner artist. XP Pen Star Series is also pretty well known for making tablets that meet your base needs for a beginner. Their tablets also tend to be a little bit cheaper than Wacom. Links to all of these will be in the description. Although I wouldn't advise any beginner to start with a screen tablet, if you absolutely insist or you're an intermediate artist, look into the XP Pen 15.6 Pro or Wacom DT C133. Both are around $400. Just know that these aren't necessary and will not make your art better or your lines cleaner. Finally, we can talk about the routine you should start out with as a beginner. When you're first starting to draw, there are two things that are going to define a lot of your early progression: muscle memory and shape recognition. Our goal is to hone these skills in a way that forces you to think, but isn't too frustrating. This is an important step. You're going to look for artists that you really like the style of, and whose art pops out to you as being high quality and skillful. Make sure that you have their name saved somewhere so you can look them up later, and try to save a few pieces of theirs in a folder to use as future references. This will form the general direction you aim towards with your art and act as a great resource. Next, you'll want to pick out a good reference for our next exercise from one of these artists. This reference should be a front view of a character, which is drawn with clear and simple line art. Here I have two images. Which one do you think fits the criteria I laid out better? If you guessed the one on the left, you are correct. It is a much more effective reference. The reference on the left has clear and simple line art, and both of the characters are clearly visible. The image on the right, while having nothing wrong with it artistically, consists almost entirely of flowy hair and complex frills, which makes it ineffective for the following exercise. Now that you've selected a good reference, you'll want to grab your pencil and paper or your tablet and copy the line art of the piece to the best of your ability. I'll do this myself with the reference I just talked about. Your goal is to replicate it as accurately as you can, and you're not allowed to trace over the original piece. While drawing, you should use quick and long strokes in order to form every shape. This is especially important for anybody using digital in order to avoid the natural shakiness of your hands transferring to the lines. See how I make fast strokes and they turn out smooth as a result? While normally it would be best to draw a full head shape whenever you're drawing something, we're going to keep things simple and only use 2 lines to guide where the eyes and hair will be drawn. One vertical line that denotes the center of the face and the direction the head is facing, and one horizontal line that sits just above the eyelashes for each eye. Once you have these guidelines set up, in order to make things easier, we're going to simplify shapes to the best of our ability. Rather than strands of hair, you're just drawing blocks to denote the volume of each section. I'll also add that you should take more time to do this than I am. Really try your best to be accurate and keep looking at the original. Now that we've finished setting up the volumes of everything, we can go back and start adding much more detail to each strand of hair. While you're doing this, you should be trying to look at the art as analytically as you can and try to understand why certain shapes work. You don't need to rush this process. You can take your time to enjoy it and appreciate the drawing. While the final product you end up with may not be as good as the original, once you try this a few more times, you'll likely be able to replicate line art fairly accurately. This is how I started drawing myself. This will take me a while longer, so I'll speed up the rest. And we're done. It's got some proportion issues and I didn't spend enough time to make clean lines, but I've got the general idea down. This should be what you aim for. Let me share some real examples from when I started. Here are some of the first drawings of mine, just trying my best to copy these references. You can see over time that I got better and better at it. Once you feel confident in your ability to reference a photo and your ability to make shapes, you have a lot more freedom to decide where you go next. For example, you could start looking for random objects around your house and trying to sketch them as accurately as you can. That'll force you to think of whatever you draw as a three-dimensional object and help you build your library of good-looking shapes. Alternatively, you can start trying to create art pieces like a lot of artists would. Find a reference for a simple pose, sketch out the pose, and then find another reference of a character you like, and use the reference for that character to create a piece of them in that pose. This is actually how a great deal of art is drawn, and still to this day is how I make a portion of my own pieces. You can also call this art your own and post it as original content. You can always use references for poses and references for character designs, just make sure that you don't take too much from any one reference and make sure to use a multitude of artists. If you feel comfortable, you can also try to transition from pencil and paper to digital at this point after having purchased a drawing tablet. You'll likely need to redevelop your muscle memory, but you should get the hang of things soon enough. I'll also mention that as you accrue more experience, you should definitely look into doing art studies and improving your fundamentals. Some teachers believe that it's essential to learn the fundamentals first, however, this is really intimidating and a lot of the information won't process unless you have some experience already. How to do art studies is beyond the scope of this video though. Although this is by no means a requirement, there is one last thing you can do that will likely help tremendously with your motivation and progress. Get involved with a supportive community who will encourage you to continue or may even be able to give you advice. I actually host an art Discord which you can join for critique, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have myself. The link will be on screen and in the description. If you're not interested in my Discord, there are plenty of other communities with kind people who will push you to keep drawing. Just do your best to look for them. I think drawing is a wonderful skill for self-expression and creativity, and if you've already made it this far, you've taken a huge step in learning it. I really wish you all the best of luck, and if you thought this video was informative, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. That way you don't miss any art tutorials I make in the future. I also post all of my own art on my Twitter at @QuiescentRabbit. That's all for today. Leave you later.